DepEd updates. Updates on the release of clothing allowance this year 2023. Para malaman, panoorin lamang po ang buong video. Maraming salamat po. What is clothing allowance? General Appropriations Act or GA provides that an amount not exceeding 6,000 pesos per annum is authorized for the payment of uniform clothing allowance of each qualified government employee subject to the guidelines, rules, and regulations issued by the Department of Budget and Management or DBM. Who can receive uniform or clothing allowance for 2023? The circular covers civilian government personnel occupying regular, contractual, or casual positions, appointive or elective rendering services on full-time or part-time basis. Rates of uniform or clothing allowance for 2023. The uniform or clothing allowance for full-time service of government personnel shall not exceed 6,000 pesos per annum. For each subsequent year, the uniform or clothing allowance shall not exceed the amount authorized under the pertinent general provision in the annual GAA. The uniform or clothing allowance per annum for part-time services shall be in direct proportion to the uniform or clothing allowance for full-time service. For example, the uniform or clothing allowance for a part-time service shall be computed as follows. Clothing allowance part-time services or service in fiscal year 2018 equals 6,000 pesos times hours of part-time service per day, 8 hours of full-time service. Forms and other details of the clothing allowance for 2023. Number 1. The uniform or clothing allowance may be granted in the following forms. Letter A. In the form of uniforms procured through a bidding process which may include uniform articles normally worn as part of thereof such as regulation caps, belts, etc. for incumbents of positions like special police, security guard, etc. Letter B. In the form of textile materials and cash to cover sewing, tailoring costs, as has been adopted by very large departments. And Letter C. In cash form for incumbents of executive positions who may not be required to wear the prescribed uniforms, or for those who will procure their individual uniforms according to set conditions. Number 2. As far as practicable, such as uniform clothing shall use Philippine tropical fibers pursuant to Republic Act No. 92421, Series of 2004. Release date of uniform or clothing allowance for 2023. The annual clothing and uniform allowance amounting to 6,000 pesos shall be released to all eligible personnel not earlier than the first working day of April of the current year, subject to existing accounting and auditing rules and regulations and upon the release of the notice of cash allocation from DBM. Guidelines on the new DepEd uniform for teaching and non-teaching personnel. The Department of Education or DepEd adopted 4 new sets of DepEd national uniform designs for teaching and 2 new national uniform designs for non-teaching personnel starting in the transition period of the school year 2021 to 2022. Starting in school year 2022 to 2023, all teaching and non-teaching personnel shall wear the prescribed new sets of uniforms. At yun lamang po ang ating panibagong updates ngayong araw. Sana ay nakatulong at nagustuhan niyo po ang aking video at kung nakatulong po ito sa inyo, ay huwag sana mag-alinlangan na mag-like, mag-share, mag-subscribe at higit sa lahat, hit na ang maliit na kampana dyan sa baba para like kang notify sa mga videos na palagi kong ina-upload sa YouTube katulad nito. Maraming salamat po mga ka-teachers.